I think the best and most iconic brands across any category, they all have ups and downs. And those that last for decades are ones that have had ups and downs and ones that really maintain. And they show that they're still relevant with the customer. They're still relevant in culture. They're still connecting across generations because they connect on a values basis. And I think Glossier has shown that we have that level of resilience and longevity. And that actually excites me more than anything because it shows that this brand will be around in the next 10 years and the next 10 years and the next 10 years versus brands that maybe haven't gone through any ups and downs and are of more of the moment and maybe more temporary.
Explore the minds and marketing strategies behind today's winning brands and businesses. Tap into the power of the creator economy with Earned by CreatorIQ. Here's Conor Begley.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Earned. I've got Kyle, the CEO of Glossier, on the show. Welcome to the show, Kyle.
Hi, Conor. Thanks for having me.
And I am obsessed with your poster that you've got over there. Work hard and be nice to people. I love that messaging.
Oh, thanks. I've had that in my office for a really, really long time. And it's kind of core to my ethos on, obviously it takes a lot of grit and hard work, but ultimately we're here to be humans. And so how do I try to uphold that? And that's a big part of the culture we're trying to build at Glossier too. So
Totally. I think if I were to say what my motto in life is, I think it's mostly that. So I'm aligned too. So let's start at the top. You guys are on fire. You're closing in on 300 million in retail sales. You're growing well over 50%. So hats off to that, because I think that wasn't where this brand has always been, right? I'd love to start just right there. Like, you took over this brand a couple of years ago. I've been involved for the brand for a few years. What is it that's driving this really rapid growth and acceleration in the business?
yeah, well, thanks, Conor. We're really excited about the momentum. I think it's three things. I mean, first and foremost, this brand, it's such a special brand. We're entering our 10th year this year, really excited about that. But that's really at the forefront of everything we do is our brand, our community that has helped build our brand, and the products and experiences that we bring to life. So whether that's increasing our product cadence to every 4 to 6 weeks or opening up some of our retail stores, which has really allowed us to tap into the local community, brand and product and our experiences are certainly at the forefront. And then we've really laddered against a strategy around how do we now take this incredible brand to more people, more Glossier to more people. We saw this incredible opportunity where we had 51% brand awareness and less than 1% market share. And we do a lot of community listening and a lot of listening to our customers. And we heard loud and clear that our customers wanted us in more places. So that's really driven and spearheaded our omnichannel strategy, which we've activated over the past 2 years, which has been replatforming and redesigning our site. So continuing to connect digitally, which was always at the forefront of Glossier's business model and how we've always connected with our consumers. So digital remains a really important part of our strategy, but also opening up our own stores and then launching in Sephora. So we've launched in 650 doors in Sephora North America. That's been an incredible success for us. And all three of those channels allow us to connect to our community and to our customer where they are and meet them where they are. And then I would say the third thing, which is really something I'm always passionate about, is people. You don't achieve these types of results. You don't build brands that have the level of meaning that Glossier has if it isn't driven by people. And we have an incredible team, an incredible leadership team, an incredible company that is built with this mosaic of talent from inside and outside the beauty company, lots of different backgrounds. Some have been with Glossier for a really long time, some have just joined. And it is that group of people that is driving these incredible results and propelling our brand forward.
I want to hit on all three of those themes at different times. I think looking very specifically at the team, obviously you're coming in, you've got Emily, who was the founder and CEO, who's now the executive chairwoman. So you're taking over for big shoes, right? You got big shoes to fill. And then I think in addition to that, you've hired an entirely female executive team, or either hired or promoted an entirely female executive team. What was it like taking over for a brand that's got big expectations, that's got this very well-known founder? You're coming in as, somewhat of an outside CEO, although you've been with the company for a little bit of time. Walk me through that process, because I think you've done an incredible job of really invigorating the culture and the people in addition to the actual business.
Yeah, it's been a remarkable journey. I mean, I had the privilege as a brand person and someone who's always admired the most iconic and impactful brands in our era. I think Glossier certainly put itself on the map. And so I've always admired the brand from afar and what Emily built. And then she and I have an incredible partnership. And that's been, I think, really key to our success. And we've been kind of running side by side. We met now almost 3 years ago, really organically, and really hit it off and had a lot of discussions on the shared values we believe in terms of how do you build brands that have the longevity and have that kind of 100-year trajectory. And so she and I had a very, I think, simpatico relationship from the beginning. Then I joined as her chief commercial officer and then took the baton from her as CEO. So I think it allowed us to kind of run side by side and really transition the organization into its next chapter. And, Glossier was always built to be bigger than any one person, bigger than Emily. I give founders an incredible amount of credit when you build a brand and the courage and humility to build something kind of bigger than yourself. I think she certainly did that. And we are building that to think about how do we build Glossier to be the brand that is generation defining and really is the next modern legacy brand in beauty. And that means building a brand that's built by a lot of people, Emily, I, and in this amazing team and our amazing company. So that really helped, I think, on the transition and the continuity as we think about getting into the next chapter. And then to your point, we've assembled an incredible team. It's one thing I'm most proud of in terms of the women around the table leading Glossier. It's unfortunately quite rare to have a beauty brand that's female founded, female led, and an entirely female leadership team. And for an industry that I think is so important for women. It's important that women are driving and leading that strategy from the top. And it has been an incredible mosaic of talent of leaders, some of whom have been chief creative officer, has been with the brand for 6 years, so has incredible legacy with the brand and has really driven so much of this brand's connectivity with culture and design. Marie, and she comes from Condé Nast, an editorial background, to our CMO comes from L'Oreal, to our CFO from Stripe, to our chief people officer from Snap, to our chief commercial officer from Chanel. So it's an incredible integration of backgrounds and experiences of brands inside and outside of beauty. And to me, I think that's where you get the best type of innovation and leadership, is you put people around the table that make each other better and are complementary to each other. And somehow this 1 + 1 + 1 can equal 10 because you're really unlocking the unique powers of each leader. And I think that transcends and cascades throughout our organization and how we build our teams and how we tap into diversity of thinking, diversity of thought, and how that propels innovation and I think kind of outsized results.
Yeah, I'd be curious kind of to go back to kind of when you first joined. Obviously this was a brand that had gotten a lot of fanfare, had raised a lot of money, and then had run into some kind of tougher times, right? There were some layoffs and some other things that happened. For people that are coming into a situation like that, where you really are trying to rebuild momentum, what is it that's unique about that and being in a business like that maybe has gotten punched a couple times and needs to kind of regain its footing? What's the approach for that specifically that you found that works so well?
I think for us, we did a lot of soul searching around how do we propel? We have unequivocal belief that this brand has had such an impact on the beauty industry and such an impact on culture, such an impact on retail. It was so disruptive 10 years ago and has so much potential. And so we did a lot of centering around, well, what's our strategy going to be go forward? And started by saying, really, what is our superpower? And going back to what makes Glossier uniquely Glossier? And what is the power in this brand? And how do we use that to propel forward? And through that kind of grounding work, we said, our superpower is Glossier is a community-driven beauty brand, and one that is driven by products and experiences and kind of resonates across generations with this community with that lens. And really centering on that and saying that we're not a D2C company. That's not the value proposition. That's not why customers are coming to Glossier. It is a channel that we connect with customers, but channels evolve, the customer evolved, the markets evolved, and brands endure. We're also not a technology company. We use technology to connect with our community, but it's a means to our end. It's not our end. So I think that level of strategic clarity on saying what has led to Glossier's success and refocusing and recentering and elevating that, and then aligning our resources and strategy against that, and then consistently and repeatedly delivering around that has allowed us to really propel the brand into the future. And I think the fact that we've had so much success and there's been so much momentum, I think is a real proof of the resilience and the longevity of this brand. I think the best and most iconic brands across any category, they all have ups and downs. And those that last for decades are ones that have had ups and downs and ones that really maintain. And they show that they're still relevant with the customer. They're still relevant in culture. They're still connecting across generations because they connect on a values basis. And I think Glossier has shown that we have that level of resilience and longevity. And that actually excites me more than anything because it shows that this brand will be around in the next 10 years and the next 10 years and the next 10 years versus brands that maybe haven't gone through any ups and downs and are of more of the moment and maybe more temporary.
Yeah, I love you've mentioned this kind of pulling from a few different responses that you've had. And from that very specific response, I think that the thing that I've observed both in these interviews and just kind of in life is that if I look at the leaders that have really done an unbelievable job, the idea of consistency and focus kind of come through. And it was very clear to me coming into this interview, having looked at the way that you talked about things and the way that you communicated externally, that you've got that, right? And I think the like 50% awareness, 1% market share, being year 10 of a 100-year brand, these are things that came up in this interview and have come up consistently in the past. I have to imagine that's a value that you really think about a lot in terms of saying like, hey, let's strip out the noise, focus on what matters, and really be, I think it accelerates everything. So more commentary than
Yeah.
question, maybe.
No, I think you're right on, Connor. I think like focus and execution is what allows, you can have a lot of great ideas and a lot of things at the table, but how you translate those ideas into execution and reality is so much an effort of focus. Is like, how do you center around what your unique distinctive competency is? What are you uniquely able to compete on? What are you uniquely bringing into the world? What are you uniquely bringing to customers in your community? And then lining up everything around that and being so rigorous and disciplined around bringing that to life. And so for us, focus has been a huge part of the acceleration and journey that we've been on. And it comes to life in really saying, what is that superpower? What makes Glossier unique? And how do we keep that in the forefront of everything we do? And making sure that that informs our strategy, it informs our resource allocation, it informs our messaging, and that level of consistency. And then I bring that to life in our culture. We have the same strategic house that we've built that describes our strategy. I present every all hands. I'm sure our team might be a little sick of it at this point. The same. And then we have a very short list of focus priorities that drive each year that the entire organization, again, those are at every all hands. We revisit those. And then we have a big culture and a belief in transparency. I believe that people, when they're empowered with information and when they're empowered with context, they can execute and deliver because they can see where they fit in the total strategy and the total ecosystem. So we're very transparent with our results. We're very transparent of where we're winning, where we're not, where we want to go, and with the entire organization. And I think that builds both a culture of empowerment, informed culture, and allows you to take this kind of mosaic of talent, people with all different backgrounds and experiences, say you run at what you're best to run at, but you're running in the same direction and with the same North Star that we're executing together as a company.
Yeah, I think rowing in the right direction is highly underrated, right? Like giving that clarity and being so clear and consistent that it almost gets boring and annoying, I think is actually a big part of being the CEO, right? So I'd love to dive into, obviously our world is the world of social media, influencers, et cetera. And one of the things I always found interesting, because during the kind of initial rise of Glossier, we would get asked about you guys a lot. And what we found was that from my perspective, the brand always actually kind of underperformed a little bit with influencers, at least from our numbers, relative to say how well the brand was known outside of that. And so a lot of that's changed. If you look at the last year, you guys are up almost 50% in EMV, got over $100 million in coverage. So that channel has accelerated significantly for you guys. What do you think it is that's driving such tremendous growth with Glossier and influencers today?
It's been a big part of our strategy on saying, where's the puck going in terms of, we have always been a people-powered, kind of community-powered ecosystem at our heart, but really seeing where the consumer is, where the marketing landscape is going, and how do we need to connect there. And so it was a big intentional shift for us to say, we're going to really invest in an always-on influencer campaign where we can continue, not even campaign, but an influencer strategy where we're partnering with both existing creators and really fostering the community that was always so core to Glossier. I think that's what makes our success, I think, so sustainable, is that it's really authentic. Like, it's not, Glossier has been born of the community and really came to being of the Instagram era. Now we're evolving towards more of the TikTok generation, but we're continuing to connect, I think, via our community and being those platforms. And then we made a really conscious effort to develop and really foster those authentic relationships with new creators. So, in 2023, we had 70% new creators in our ecosystem that allow us to really expand and diversify our relationships. And how we partner with those creators through gifting or inviting them to events or welcoming them into our community, I think then really it allows us to amplify and develop those relationships and continue them over time. And I think that's translating to then the results that you're seeing and we're seeing in the influencer community, is that really like deep and authentic connection and relationships that we've built with creators, and then continuing to add to that ecosystem of creators and propel that into the future. But it's all really tethering back to Glossier's roots of what does it mean to be a people-powered ecosystem, and what does that mean in today's environment where these social platforms have evolved so significantly and where consumers are getting so much of their content and education from platforms like TikTok and Instagram.
All right, you're saying all the right things. It's definitely what we see, right? Be consistent in terms of approach, right? build from the ground up with your existing community. That's where authenticity exists. And then as you bring people in, foster more of a, like to your point, ecosystem around the brand where in some ways you're connecting them too. So I'm curious from a TikTok, you mentioned TikTok specifically, you guys are crushing it there. I mean, I think it's like a weird number, like 2 billion views on the Glossier hashtag. We're seeing it, your EMB's up over 100% in TikTok. How is TikTok different? What are you doing with TikTok that's different than, say, Instagram? Or maybe why do you think you're doing so well there right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and it's actually now 2.7 billion. So we're excited to see
Whoa,
the momentum continue on
it's
hashtag
crazy.
Glossier. But we were born on Instagram. We're growing up on TikTok, maybe, as far as what's exciting for us is that we actually continue to see success across both platforms. I mean, I think this brand is so unique in that we are multi-generational and that we do continue to resonate with millennials. And then we've made the jump to Gen Z and even Gen Alpha. So for us, it is about, being that. And I think shared values allow us to connect multi-generationally. That's the most iconic and best brands, I think, do achieve that. And we're seeing 2,000% growth on Instagram and our monthly followers and the exponential growth that we're seeing on TikTok. So it's really an and for us. But as it relates to TikTok, I mean, I think it's a signal, I think, of how we're resonating with Gen Z. That's obviously their platform of choice for how they're really engaging with brands and learning and kind of doing their discovery. But for me, I think it's also about the mechanisms that TikTok resonates. It's so much about authenticity. It's not about being polished. It's about, sharing your product reviews in a very, I think, authentic voice. And that really resonates, I think, with Glossier's brand, which is, we grew up as an editorial brand from Into the Gloss. And so much of it was kind of, we are your beauty BFF. And I think that authenticity in how we create those stories and how we've always told those stories, but really how our community has told those stories really resonate with the content that really is working on TikTok, which is so much about authenticity and so much about, realness, so much about authentic product reviews. So I think we're really seeing that come to life. And then we see our community just pick up on it. One of the most viral moments we had in the last year or so was when we had our Glossier U franchise, which is our fragrance. Bitcoin Poppy had a very memorable TikTok content creation moment, and we saw that go viral in a very real and authentic way. So I think for us, it just really resonates both with the generation, it resonates with the means with which people are communicating today in a really authentic and relatable editorial way.
Yeah, I think that to your point, Instagram and TikTok, neither one's going away at this point. I think YouTube as well is still a player also. But I think the kind of idea of these viral moments is really interesting. When you're in the middle of that storm, right, you've got this kind of viral moment going on. What was that like? How did you approach that? How do you kind of both capitalize on it and I'm sure kind of selling out of stock? Like, what are those viral moments like and how do you navigate them?
Yeah, I think they're so exciting because they're so organic, and that it's truly like a product that, resonates and then it connects and it hits a nerve that really resonates, I think, emotionally with people. And then it just starts growing like a tumbleweed, right? And I think first and foremost, building that muscle to be able to capitalize on that, on how do you syndicate that content? How do you be able to get the right rights and kind of mobilize the organization to get behind those viral moments, start chasing inventory and start making sure that the integrated engine really reacts because you're getting a signal from the customer and the community that something is really resonating. And so I think for us, it's about, and I love that about our brand, is that we're obviously a very large and meaningful brand in culture where we matter in the beauty industry and we have a brand that's larger than life in many regards, but we're still highly entrepreneurial and really nimble and agile. We move with speed. We have a really entrepreneurial culture. And I think that element allows us to be able to both take advantage of moving markets, but also take advantage of being really nimble and dynamic and take advantage of those really authentic community moments. And that keeps us connected to our customer, I think, in a real way.
Let's talk about Sephora a little bit. So, you talked about that being one of the big pillars is like, let's be in more places, right? Let's be where our customers are. And clearly there was a lot of desire kind of from Sephora customers to have you guys in there. I don't remember the exact numbers, but I think you were like the number one searched brand on Sephora or something to that effect. And I think it has far exceeded expectations, somewhere around double what they actually expected you guys to do. So outside of the fact that there was a lot of pent up demand there, what was it about that Sephora launch that made it so successful for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been, first and foremost, to your point, it's incredibly been driven, like everything we do, from a customer driven. Our strategy is always a customer pull, right? What are we looking for? What are we learning from our customer and our community? Where do they want us to go? And how do we intersect that with our strategy to make sure that we're constantly moving the brand forward, moving our business forward? And we heard loud and clear The number one thing from our customers was like, when are you going to be in Sephora? And then we did our homework on the research on search dynamics, and we found we were the number one search brand on Sephora. So it was very clear that, and then in close alignment with Sephora's leadership and our brand positioning, we felt it was the right place to really truly bring more Glossier to more people. And to your point, we've seen incredible success, more than 100 million in year one out of the gates across categories. Our fragrance is the number one fragrance in Sephora, and showing incredible momentum. So we're thrilled with the initial customer response. And I think it's driven a combination of this brand appetite and having this brand meet customers where they're shopping for beauty. Sephora is the preeminent prestige beauty destination, and she's shopping there across brands, and finding Glossier in that mix really allows her, I think, to connect deeper with the brand. We also entered in a really unique and Glossier only way. I think, we're always oriented around how do we play the playbook, but how do we disrupt the playbook at the same time? And so even things like our visual merchandising display, our gondola, or the way that we activated with the beauty advisors to, have everyone in Glossier t-shirts, or have a little You Look Good mirror, on our gondola that has that selfie moment that really ties back to our own retail stores experience, to how we're representing the brand as a multi-category lifestyle brand. All those things kind of, I think, play into how we're winning at Sephora, not just with the Sephora playbook, but with a unique Glossier x Sephora playbook that has resulted in exponential growth for us together.
Yeah. And I think there's obviously a nice halo effect as well, right, to your own channels, because just more people are seeing you, you're in more places. I think, we see it really frequently in terms of the brands that are doing really well in our numbers are often Sephora exclusive brands, whether that's Say or Tilbury or Rare or whatever, or you guys, right? So what I'm curious about is, clearly you guys probably knew that people wanted you in Sephora. I can't imagine Sephora was against having you guys in store. Why hadn't that happened maybe 3 years ago? Like, what was it that kind of took that long to actually make that decision? And I know you you made it fairly quickly once you came in, but prior to that.
I'm actually very pleased that because we had a lot of time, that we were a direct-to-consumer only brand, and we had so much time to really hone it. I think worked in our favor that we had such a sharpness on what our brand stands for. I think that allowed us to really create our brand and be very intentional about the creation of brands. So I think there were a lot of benefits of being D2C only, and then having our own retail store experiences that we continue to bring to market. And then I think the customer evolved, and we saw the marketplace where it being, I think, to some of our early discussion, D2C was incredibly disruptive 10 years ago. The integration of social and commerce and the evolution of into the gloss, into a website and selling beauty online was so pioneering and so disruptive a decade ago. And I think so important to really accelerating change in the beauty industry. And Glossier led a lot of that. But then it became clear that the customer was continuing to evolve, and that there were other places that we wanted the brand to be able to meet the customer where they are. And so it was a natural evolution for us to enter wholesale at that time.
Yeah. And you mentioned your own stores. I think you've got close to a dozen of those. And again, I think similar to Sephora, they operate as much as a marketing and community channel as a revenue driving channel. How do you actually measure? So if that's the case, let's assume that stores are not just about sales. How do you measure success there? What are you looking at that justifies, because these are real significant capital investments, that justifies those investments outside of maybe purely sales?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and so important how we think about our strategy. It truly is about an ecosystem. When we think about omnichannel, it's about putting the customer at the center and saying, how are we servicing and bringing to life our brand across that ecosystem, and how do all the parts work together? It's not about looking at each channel as an individual part. It is truly the sum of the parts. And that's been core to our strategy. I think it's incredibly differentiating. Not too many beauty brands have their own retail stores. I think it is a huge differentiator for Glossier, in that we are not just a products company. We are a products and experiences company. We bring that to life through really experiential retail in a powerful way, through our editors, through our store design, through our community eventing that happens in these stores. So the stores play an incredibly important role in that ecosystem. And we see it as a major customer acquisition driver. So we've acquired hundreds of thousands of new customers through our stores as kind of market entry points. We see the value of those customers is higher. So LTV is higher in customers that either start in a store or purchase in multiple of our channels. And then they create this kind of market brand halo that allows the brand to have a larger than life presence in a marketplace. And then you see that showing up in people lining up. When we opened our Soho store, we had people in line at 1 a.m. the night before, or in Williamsburg, 6 hours of lines, And to me, those are the intangible signals around what a brand means in a marketplace, which is if you have people waiting in line for hours, they want to be a part of what you're building. And it's about being part of something bigger than themselves, being part of a community, being part of a brand. brand. It's the same reason people wear sweatshirts of Glossier. You don't see a lot of beauty brands where people wear you don't see a lot of brands, period, where people wear the sweatshirt of a brand. And those are values level emotional connectivity that this brand has that is truly, I think, both transcendent of beauty and transcendent really across culture. So it's really important. And the last piece I would say on stores is at the same time, they're also four-wall profitable. So our stores are incredible marketing engines for us. They are incredible community connectivity. They help us acquire customers and build customer relationships. But they also are a profitable growth engine for us and are a really important part of our distribution strategy also.
Well, that's good. It's good that they're making money. That makes it a lot easier to make the investment. And on that, I love the framework I heard, not framework, just like the way that he thought about it. I thought it was fascinating. This idea of like, you're talking about wearing the sweatshirt. So we had the president of Stanley, they're on fire. Prior to that, he was a CMO at Crocs who, they were not on fire prior to. And then he called it the airport test. He's like, I would go into the airport and see whether or not my products would show up there. He's like, if somebody's willing to wear it at the airport where there's a lot of people, there's a lot of public, it's public placed. He's like, that means you're willing to show it off, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, I would go to the airport and watch to see if we would show up and where we would show up and how we would show up. And so I love that concept. I'm sure there's a lot of Glossier sweatshirts in airports for sure.
Yeah, I love that test. That's like how you know you're in culture, right? Is like when people are wearing it and they want to, what are they saying about themselves by wearing or associating with this brand? And that's a very next level emotional signal that you're giving. So I love that airport test. I think that's a great one. And we do see a lot of sweatshirts at airports too with Stanley Cups.
Exactly. So in addition to kind of consistency and focus, I think one of the other things I've found to be consistent with brands that are being really successful is speed. And if I were to think about the number of things that have happened since you've gotten involved, whether that's replatforming on Shopify, moving into this very fast moving platform on TikTok, launching in Sephora, you've accelerated the kind of product launch pace quite a bit. I'm curious for you, how do you think about speed? Is that something that you emphasize? And if it is, I think one of the hardest things about emphasizing speed is it can make people uncomfortable. It can make people upset that aren't used to that pace or aren't comfortable with the risk associated with that. So one, is that something you think about? And then if it is, how do you kind of navigate not totally disrupting the organization while pushing them to go faster?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is incredibly important. I think to me, it's about agility and are you going where your customer is going and is your strategy evolving to where they are, which has kind of been at the core of a lot of our strategic, what's given us that focus and that clarity to go forward. And I think when you have a level of clarity and focus, it goes back to, I think, what we talked about around having the same North Star, rowing in the same direction. You can't move fast if you're not rowing in the same direction. And if you're not explicitly clear on what you're doing and what you're not doing. Like a big challenge of focus is what are you saying no to and what are you doing and how are you all aligned and going in the same direction? So we have found that we've been able to move an organization incredibly quickly because we've had explicit clarity on our strategy. What are we doing and why? What our superpower is? What are our strategic initiatives? And then how are we able to enable the company to run at those because we're staying on path, we're staying consistent and we're focused on execution. But how do you also do that at a really high bar? I mean, I think that's the most important thing about speed is that you can't sacrifice quality, especially for a brand with the intentionality and with the level of detail that our brand is. Like we cannot move fast at the expense of quality. So it's how do you move excellently and at speed? And to me, that comes down to clarity, focus, and consistency because you're able to really, really move. But we were able to do that through replatforming to Shopify, entering Sephora, launching some of these stores on incredible timelines. We are over delivering our 3-year plan by a whole year because we're seeing that level of execution come to life because of that consistency and that clarity and that focus, and then making sure that your resources are aligned to execute against that.
Yeah, I think that the less you have to focus on, the faster you can make that small number of things go. We just did our annual team get together summit, et cetera. And it's like, there are 2 objectives for the year. That's it. And we hit them like 25 times in like a single day period. But it's like people are not confused about what we're focused on.
Yeah, it's so important.
On this topic of focus, we're hitting it a lot today, and I'm glad we are because I think it's so important. You've launched into new categories. So you'd mentioned perfume, right? You're the number 1 perfume product within Sephora. We got deodorant with 20,000 people on the waiting list. I've always thought about how do you prevent yourself from getting overextended? We've all seen the brands that have 20 different product categories and really don't stand for like, hey, these are our 3 hero products. These are the things that we're good at. How do you prevent yourself from getting overextended as a brand? And how do you decide like deodorant, perfume, these are the right categories for us to play in.
I think to your point, it's incredibly important if you're focused around how do we unlock the real, what is the core superpower of a brand and how do we unlock that? What do you say no to? What do you say yes to? And when you have the permission to play, one of the things I think that's so powerful about Glossier is we have the permission to play in so many different categories. We have permission to play in so many different markets. So for us, it's really been thoughtful around thoughtfulness and discipline around how we're thinking about the time phasing of how we activate our brand and our initiatives. One thing that is very unique to Glossier is that we were built as a multi-category brand from the beginning. We were a makeup, skincare. Our fragrance has been around for 6 years. So it's actually been a big part of how we were built, is that we really put our community and our customer at the center and said, how do we meet them with a multi-category perspective? And that is unique in beauty. Usually you just have a makeup brand, maybe they make one leap into a second category or otherwise. And so for us, it was part of how we were built from the very beginning, which allowed us to really lean into and there's a lot of benefits from that, from a diversification of our portfolio perspective. But then we stay highly curated. The word curation is really important for us. We are curators of culture. We're curators of products. We don't have a million products. We have really intentional icons within our product line. And that's allowed us to really focus on those big core, we call them our superheroes. What are our superhero products? And how do we stay focused on Glossier U within perfume, or Boy Brow within makeup, or Future Do within our skincare line. So I think for us, it's allowed us to really think about how do we build core icons. I think the best brands are built on these core icons. What are the future icons? What are the current icons? And how do we continue to build those in the marketplace? And then be really thoughtful around how we're expanding. So for instance, we were really focused on the North America strategy in the UK to start. We had not expanded globally, and we have a tremendous consumer demand to do that. So now we're just starting to launch international shipping, and we're seeing incredible results from the global community. And now we will continue to roll out really thoughtful global expansion. But we didn't just go curtains up around the world all at once, because we felt it was really important to get things right and then export excellence as we continue to stay focused. So I think it's about, when you have a brand that has decades of potential, it's about how are you really thoughtful and disciplined around how do you think about expansion in a really discerning way that allows you to kind of be intentional about how you're bringing the brand and developing the brand to market, so you can maintain an incredibly high quality and you can make sure that you're being really thoughtful about how your strategy comes to life.
Every time somebody buys a product and has like a mediocre experience or doesn't have an exceptional experience, the likelihood of them coming back again drops. And so in the short term, you can roll out all these new products, get that first purchase in. But if they don't have a kind of an experience where they want that to be a recurring part of their life, it hurts you in the long run. So I love this idea of kind of superhero SKUs. A couple questions on you, just kind of more personally in your background. So one of the things I found really fascinating is your undergrad, when you went to Georgetown, you got degrees in math and English, which are typically seen as being the opposite ends of the spectrum, right? The whole like left brain, right brain kind of thing. How did that happen? Like, talk to me about that. That's just not, I don't think I've ever come across somebody where their dual degree was in English and math, right? Tell me about that a little bit.
It's very actually core to, I think, kind of who I am and why I love doing what I do, which is the blend of art and science. And it comes from growing up. My mom was an artist. My dad was a mathematician turned businessman. And so I had that kind of like right brain, left brain. I guess from the very beginning, I've always loved the creative space. And that's what draws me to a brand that has so much creativity and so much cultural resonance that Glossier does. But I'm also a math nerd at heart. So, the intersection of those two things, and certainly I think what we're doing at Glossier between building an amazing brand and then now building a business that lives up to that brand, is why I think this is the right moment in time for me to help steward it in its next chapter. And it's a combination of my loves between the analytical mind and a love of the arts and humanities.
It's funny how much of it comes back to your parents. My dad was an engineer. My mom was a psychologist. So, somewhere in between those two. One kind of last fun end of show question. So, if I were to look at your trajectory, just what's on paper, it's been like a fairly unending sequence of success and progression, right? So Georgetown, math and English, consulting for 4 years, Harvard MBA, decade run at Cole Haan, where you go from director to EVP and GM, to then CEO at Glossier, where you come on and the brand, rapidly accelerates. So I'm curious, what does Kyle do for fun? Because it looks like you don't get that kind of success having a lot of hobbies. So what are your hobbies? What do you do outside of work?
Oh, well, I I would say I work to live, not the other way around. First and foremost, I'm a mom. I have a 5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, my daughter, James, and my son, Cannon, and an incredible partner, my husband, Mike, and they're my whole world. So they drive a lot of my fun, and that's job number one for me for sure. And a lot of what inspires me about what we're doing at Glossier is for the world I hope to build for those two little ones. And we love to travel and explore the world. We were just in Japan over the holidays and bringing our children to Tokyo and having them experience that culture. And we're big foodies. And I would say just like experiences, that's certainly what fills my cup. And doing that with people I love, whether it's my family or friends from different chapters in my life, is what keeps me motivated and inspired and kind of gets me out of my own four walls. But that's what I'm doing it all for sure, for them, and to hopefully live a full, rich life of those experiences.
It's crazy that you're a mom inside of all of that. We have 3 kids too. We got a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old. My wife has made the brave decision of staying at home. And it's like, I don't know how she does it. It looks incredibly challenging. Kyle, thank you again. I think what you've accomplished is so impressive. And I think what you and the team have accomplished is so impressive. And excited to watch what you guys do this year and over the next 98 years with the brand, or 88 years. So congrats again. It's really cool to watch.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Conor. It's a pleasure. It's certainly the power to this brand and this team, and it is a very special thing. So I appreciate taking the time. Nice to chat with you, and we'll talk soon.
Be a friend, tell a friend, and subscribe. Earned by CreatorIQ. CreatorIQ is your all-in-one solution to grow, manage, scale, and measure your influencer marketing program. Ready to unlock the power of the creator economy? Get started with a demo today at CreatorIQ.com.